The problem is, up to now 11, we're trying to top what we do every single year.
When most people think about The Big Bang Theory, they remember the laughs, the quirky characters, and the iconic catchphrases that became part of pop culture. The sitcom ran for 12 years, making it one of the longest-running and most successful comedy series in television history. Fans often picture Penny, played by Kaley Cuoco, sitting across from Sheldon, Leonard, Raj, and Howard, sharing takeout food from white Chinese containers or serving drinks in her apartment. The chemistry between the actors looked natural and effortless, as if they were simply having fun with each other. But behind those scenes, things were very different. What viewers saw on screen was carefully planned, rehearsed, and guided by a strict set of rules that every cast member, including Cuoco, had to follow. Some of these rules were about protecting the show's consistency, while others were designed to keep the actors safe or maintain the image of their characters. Kaley Cuoco herself once admitted that there was one particular rule she hated, but she had no choice but to follow it. That is the surprising truth about television. No matter how lighthearted or funny a show appears, the process of creating it is filled with discipline, structure, and decisions made far above the actors' control. From the food on the set to the way the actors looked, spoke, and even behaved in their personal lives. Everything about The Big Bang Theory was shaped by these behind-the-scenes restrictions. To truly understand how a sitcom like this becomes a global hit, we need to look at the hidden guidelines that defined its production. These rules reveal not only the challenges faced by Cuoco and her co-stars, but also the extraordinary effort required to keep a show running smoothly for more than a decade. When people look back at The Big Bang Theory, they often remember the bright laughter, the quirky characters, and the nerdy world that made science and comic books feel cool. For 12 years, the sitcom dominated television ratings and built a global fan base that adored Penny, Sheldon, Leonard, Raj, and Howard. The chemistry on screen looked so effortless that it sometimes felt as though the cast were simply friends hanging out, sharing Chinese takeout or arguing about superheroes. But behind that polished final product was a world of structure, pressure, and rules that every cast member had to follow. Kaley Cuoco, who played Penny, once admitted that one rule in particular drove her crazy, but she had no choice but to accept it. That single statement gives us a window into how much discipline went into producing a show that looked light and fun on the surface. Like many sitcoms, The Big Bang Theory was not just about delivering jokes. It was about creating a consistent world where nothing was left to chance. From the food on the table to the clothes on the characters' backs, every small detail was controlled. Even the personal lives of the actors sometimes had to bend to protect the show. This might surprise viewers who imagine that sitcom actors spend their time improvising and laughing their way through tapings. The reality is that television, especially one as big as The Big Bang Theory, requires a strict set of guidelines. These rules were designed to protect continuity, manage production costs, safeguard actors, and preserve the carefully crafted image of the series. Understanding these behind-the-scenes rules not only helps us see the sacrifices actors like Cuoco made, but also shows the hidden effort that keeps a massive hit on air for over a decade. One of the most famous elements of The Big Bang Theory was the constant appearance of food. Whether it was Chinese takeout spread across Leonard and Sheldon's table, Penny serving drinks, or group meals at the Cheesecake Factory, food became part of the show's identity. But what most fans did not realize is that all of that food was real. Unlike many sitcoms, which often rely on fake or plastic food props, the production team insisted on using actual meals. Scott London, the show's prop master, prepared real dishes that matched the dialogue, from fried rice mixed with vegetables and soy sauce to warm soups kept in thermoses. It might sound delicious, but here is where the strict rule came in. The actors were not supposed to eat it. The reason was simple: continuity. Imagine if a scene needed several takes. If Jim Parsons as Sheldon had half a dumpling on his plate in one take and a completely empty plate in the next, the editing would look messy. To avoid this, the cast was told to push food around, pretend to chew, or take the smallest possible bites. Kaley Cuoco confessed that she hated this rule. Sometimes, if she knew a dinner scene was scheduled, she would skip lunch just so she could sneak a few real bites during filming. Her co-star Johnny Galecki even had a memorable incident where too much hot sauce in his soup nearly made him choke mid-scene. While this rule may sound strange, it highlights how much detail went into keeping the show believable. Fans later worried that all of this uneaten food was wasted, but Cuoco reassured them through behind-the-scenes videos that leftovers were donated, not thrown away. This rule may have annoyed the actors, but it also demonstrated the hidden work that went into creating the sense of realism audiences loved. Another surprising rule had nothing to do with acting at all, but with the business of entertainment. Fans of the show noticed early on that while Sheldon and his friends constantly discussed superheroes, wore themed t-shirts, and even dressed up for conventions, they never mentioned Marvel directly. There were no Spider-Man posters in Stewart's comic book shop, no Iron Man costumes, and no Captain America t-shirts. Instead, most of the references were about DC Comics characters like Superman, Batman, or The Flash. The reason was not taste, but ownership. The Big Bang Theory aired on CBS, but it was owned by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers also owns DC Comics. Promoting Marvel, their biggest rival, would have been free advertising for the competition. On top of that, licensing Marvel material would have required extra money and agreements that Warner Brothers did not want to deal with. This rule became more obvious after 2008, when the Marvel Cinematic Universe exploded in popularity with the release of Iron Man. Even as Marvel took over theaters, the sitcom stayed loyal to DC, with endless Flash t-shirts and Superman jokes. Raj once dressed as the Norse god Thor, but not the Marvel version, just a generic mythology costume. For fans, it might have seemed like a small detail, but for the producers, it was an important boundary. This rule is a reminder that television is not just about art. It is also about corporate interests, what actors wear, what posters hang on the wall, or even what characters talk about can be influenced by the business side of Hollywood. While some rules were about business or appearances, others came from real danger. In 2010, Kaley Cuoco suffered a terrifying horseback riding accident. She was thrown from her horse and in a shocking moment, the animal landed on her leg. Doctors even considered amputation before a series of surgeries saved it. Production had to scramble to explain her absence. And for showrunner Chuck Lorre, the incident was the darkest moment in all 12 seasons of the show. After this scare, new safety rules were introduced. Cast members were warned to avoid risky activities like riding horses, motorcycles, or even boating. While some of these restrictions were written jokingly, such as "no friggin' horses" in one of Lorre's famous vanity cards, the message was clear. The show could not risk losing one of its stars. Another safety rule came after a prank went wrong. Cuoco and Johnny Galecki once tried to pull a playful stunt where he pretended to punch her, but instead she hit her head on a chair and needed stitches. After that, all pranks were banned on set. What might have seemed like harmless fun turned into a strict no jokes off camera policy. These incidents highlight how fragile the production of a major sitcom can be. Fans may think of actors as replaceable, but the truth is that losing even one key cast member could disrupt everything. That is why safety became such a big concern. While these rules may have limited the cast's freedom, they also made sure the show could continue without another near tragedy. Anyone who has watched The Big Bang Theory knows that the characters' appearances were part of their identities. Howard's flashy belt buckles and tight pants, Sheldon's endless rotation of superhero t-shirts, and Amy's layered sweaters all became iconic. But for the actors, maintaining this consistency was not easy. Simon Helberg, who played Howard, often struggled to squeeze into his clothes. Some of his pants were so tight that he joked about needing butter to take them off. Costume designer Mary Quigley even had to sew snaps onto Howard's turtleneck for the pilot so it would stay tucked in. Jim Parsons and Johnny Galecki had to remain clean-shaven for most of the series, because producers felt that beards or stubble would make the characters look too confident and cool, which clashed with their nerdy personas. The only time fans saw them with facial hair was during the North Pole Expedition storyline, but even then the beards were fake to maintain control over their appearance. These rules about clothing and grooming might sound small, but they played a huge role in making the characters recognizable and consistent. Fans could instantly identify Sheldon from his t-shirt or Howard from his tight jeans, and that kind of visual consistency helped keep the show's world believable. For the actors, however, it sometimes meant discomfort or frustration. Yet they all accepted it as part of their job, showing how much detail goes into keeping characters the same across hundreds of episodes. One of the most surprising rules for many fans is that improvisation was almost never allowed on The Big Bang Theory. Unlike other sitcoms where actors are encouraged to riff or add personal touches, the writers of this show demanded that every line be delivered exactly as written. Melissa Rauch, who played Bernadette, once compared it to performing a concerto, where every note has to be exact. Because the show was filmed in front of a live studio audience, timing was everything. If an actor ad-libbed, it could disrupt the rhythm, mess up the punchline, or throw off the editing. Instead, when a joke did not land, the writers would quickly rewrite it and hand the actors new lines. Jim Parsons, who had to deliver long speeches filled with scientific jargon, developed his own system to handle this challenge. He wrote his lines out on note cards again and again until he memorized them perfectly. He even retyped scenes on his computer to reinforce them. His dedication made Sheldon believable. even when the dialogue was filled with complicated terms. There were a few rare moments of improvisation, such as Kevin Sussman's ad-libbed line about sarcastic comments, which ended up shaping his character of Stuart. But for the most part, discipline was the rule. This level of control might sound limiting, but it also gave the show its sharpness and precision. Every laugh you hear from the studio audience came from a carefully crafted moment, not a random line. For fans, it meant reliable humor. For actors, it meant strict discipline and hours of preparation. As the show grew into a global hit, the actors faced another set of rules outside the studio. Constant promotion. Being part of the Big Bang Theory meant more than just acting. It meant becoming an ambassador for the series. The cast had to attend press events, fan conventions, and late-night talk shows, sometimes even when they were working on other projects. Kunal Naya remembered a trip to Brazil where hundreds of fans gathered outside their hotel, cheering until the cast appeared on the balcony. While moments like that were exciting, the pressure of being in the spotlight was not always easy. Johnny Galecki admitted he often lost sleep before talk show appearances because he was nervous about appearing as himself instead of Leonard. At the same time, producers worked hard to keep the cast grounded. Chuck Lorre and Bill Prady reminded them that the show's success was not about individual stars, but about the ensemble. Off-screen, the actors built friendships, playing ping-pong, going on trips, and having dinners together. This rule of humility helped prevent the egos and conflicts that sometimes damage long-running shows. Kaley Cuoco often said the cast felt like a real family, and Jim Parsons credited their closeness for making long production days easier. Fame may have been a rule they could not escape, but humility kept them balanced. Beyond acting and fame, the show also enforced rules about accuracy and structure. A physics professor, David Saltzberg, worked as a consultant to make sure every equation and scientific reference was believable. Scripts were sometimes handed to him with blank spaces marked "Science to Come," and he would fill in the details. Mayim Bialik, who played Amy and held a real PhD in neuroscience, also acted as the unofficial science police, making sure lab scenes and dialogue were correct. These rules gave the show credibility and allowed fans with scientific backgrounds to enjoy it without feeling cheated. Another rule involved performing before a live studio audience every week. This gave the comedy an energy that canned laughter could never match. But it also put pressure on the cast to deliver their lines with precision. The live feedback helped writers test jokes and make quick changes, but it also meant there was no room for mistakes. In the end, the strict structure of the show even determined how it finished. The series did not end because of low ratings. It was still hugely successful, but because Jim Parsons decided he was ready to move on. Producers agreed that the show could not continue without Sheldon or the original ensemble, so they chose to finish at its peak rather than risk decline. This decision was not just about one actor, but about respecting the rules that had guided the series from the beginning. Consistency, discipline, and the importance of the full team. Looking back, the success of The Big Bang Theory was not only about clever jokes or memorable characters, it was also about the hidden structure that kept everything in place. Kaley Cuoco's frustration with not being able to eat the food on set may sound small, but it reflects a bigger truth. Every detail was controlled, from what posters hung on the wall to how the actors dressed, from what they did in their personal lives to how they spoke on stage. Rules shaped every part of the show. These rules were sometimes annoying, sometimes funny, and sometimes deadly serious. They prevented accidents, avoided business conflicts, and maintained the unique identity of the characters. For the actors, this discipline meant sacrifice. Whether it was Cuoco skipping meals, Helberg squeezing into tight pants, or Parsons memorizing pages of scientific jargon. But these sacrifices paid off. The sitcom lasted 12 seasons, became a cultural phenomenon, and ended on a high note. Fans often talk about the warmth and humor of the show, but behind that